All right. Trying to do a quick screen share live chat on food security. Last year at the start of this pandemic, our government went to commercial farmers, livestock ranchers, dairy, produce farmers, commercial. It made them call or help them to call, compost, and dump. That was like a year ago. I've heard that we live on like last year's food supply and that we're living on this year's food supply. And I'm not sure if it's just immediate tied in with the cold freeze that so many states are affected by, but that we've lost 45% of our wheat, which is also animal feed. But I'm just going to share. This is from last April, I believe. It's 4 minutes.
Of Bitter Creek, Archer County, North Texas. We have to talk. State officials will be assisting to help identify potential alternative markets if a producer is unable to move animals, and if necessary, advise and assist on depopulation and disposal methods. Ladies and gentlemen, we are plowing under vegetable crops from coast to coast. We are euthanizing millions of chickens. We are aborting sows and burying feeder pigs. We are dumping milk by the hundreds of thousands of gallons, and now they are preparing us to depopulate the fat cattle ready to harvest because of a bottleneck created by the effects of COVID. This thing hasn't been created by COVID, but the effects of COVID and the logistics therein. We are in trouble. Our food supply is in trouble, and I am appealing to producers and consumers across the nation to start calling. Yesterday, the first shipment of imported beef from the country of Namibia hit the shores of the United States of America. And yet this morning, they are telling us to prepare to euthanize harvest-ready cattle. Am I the only one that sees a problem in this? It is time we get the American people back to work. It is time we get money flowing. It is time we get food on the shelves. Because if you're not concerned about this food supply problem, you better be. We have a huge supply and demand of food across this nation. We can feed the world ourselves, and yet we're destroying our harvests. At the same time, we are importing beef from other countries, beef that is less regulated than our beef, less safe, not as high quality of product, and yet it's happening. At the same time, they are preparing for us to euthanize our harvests. Does that make sense to America? For the last 10 years, we have been pressed to be sustainable. I've said all along, sustainability is a fraud. And right now, we're being forced to destroy our harvests. That doesn't sound like sustainability to me. It is time we get back to work. It is time the American people force the government to listen to us. We are of, by, and for the people. This is not Nancy Pelosi's country. This is not Donald Trump's country. This is your country, and you're going to go hungry. We must get regional and local packing houses up and going. Do we have to have those big packing plants? You bet we do, and they need to be running right now. You as a consumer are in trouble. My dad told me years ago the best thing that would happen to America is if everybody had to sit in the dark, cold, and hungry, and that would wake them up. Well, I think it's coming. We're in a dangerous position, ladies and gentlemen. We need to get going on this today, not tomorrow, today. You need to be calling your legislators. We need to be opening up the country. Your food supply is in danger. Ranchers are going broke every day. We're doing all we can to stay here. We are in crisis in America. This is a crisis. This is a national crisis. And everybody's just sitting back enjoying their time off, enjoying that $1,200.
Yep.
Not knowing that overnight you're going to go hungry. It's coming. My apologies for my tone. I'm worried about my country.
All right, that was from April 28, 2020. And I heard it might not have just been.
We are the thrivers. Women with metastatic breast cancer, standing in the struggle,
May not have
hustling
been
through the hurt, asking for
the USDA alone, but the government went to our commercial ranchers, produce farmers, and dairy farms and forced them and offered to help too, like with the cattle. Vets could inject. It's kind of hard to call a lot of animals. And then if you inject them, that meat can't be used anyhow. That was last April. While the food banks started to run low and people were driving and waiting in lines miles long to get some food for their family at the start of this. This is back in April. Okay, March 13th was the public health emergency. So this is April. Plants closed down. So like he said, the bottleneck. Okay, so, well, your ranchers can't afford to keep feeding their already 2-year-old cattle ready for slaughter. So we'll help you liquefy or find ways to call them. Now, that was almost a whole year ago. You add all this up, and now this crisis in Texas, so here's just one more little news feed.
In Texas, and now more broadly, is a dynamic one, with some calling what's going on a humanitarian crisis in light of the fact that there are millions of people that don't have power.
By the way, this guy here, Ice Age Farmer. Great channel to sub to. Ice Age Farmer, keeping tabs on the food chain.
Or heating, or any means of cooking their food, or water in many cases. Municipal water supplies have pipes bursting, and so people are getting text messages that they need to boil their water. There's a boil water advisory, and if you don't have power with an electric range, you can't do that. So it's you can see there's a cascading series of failures that is getting out of hand here. And I want to bring your attention particularly to this article. The Texas Agricultural Commissioner has issued a red alert regarding agriculture and our food supply chain in Texas.
All right, I just sped up his the speed 1.25 just so because it's like 13 minutes long. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but just red alert: food supply chain shutting down as blackouts spread.
Saying that farmers and ranchers are being affected by this interruption into electrical supply and to natural gas. We're unable to draw water to water our animals. We're not able to keep our animals warm. And this is really devastating for feed, livestock, and agricultural products. Not to mention the oil and gas wells that are frozen up. So lots of stuff to talk about. I'm Christian, and this is the Ice Age Farmer broadcast. And of course, ERCOT has put out warnings today that the blackouts will continue for an indeterminate amount of time. It will be days at least until people have full electricity back. But then they go on to say, we're not really sure how long it's going to take. What we're trying to avoid is a full collapse of the grid, which would take even longer to repair. They said, actually, quote, an uncontrolled blackout will leave Texans without power for an indeterminate amount of time, maybe a month. It's a little concerning to see them even acknowledging the possibility that if things get worse or if they can't transfer things. In fact, I also read down here that although we've been adding generators to the supply, trying to get generation up because consumption is through the roof, these generators are breaking down and we haven't been maintaining our grid as well as we'd like. So if generation keeps falling offline, and we're already seeing them starting to pull power from other parts of the country, which didn't think that was supposed to happen, right? Texas grid is separate from the rest of the U.S., but you see these reports from, for example, in North Dakota, their grid is going down. Here, a cattle rancher in North Dakota saying, yeah, they say our grid is overloaded. It's never happened before. Here again is another cattle rancher in Nebraska who says our power is getting shut down. This means our overhead doors don't operate. Our security and fire system doesn't work. It's freezing outside. What are we supposed to do? Again, cattle ranchers need power to keep their operations running. And then again, here from Keith Nystrom in South Dakota, who says, thanks a lot, guys. You've shuffled the power to go south and they've shut down the grain elevators here. We're not critical infrastructure. That means I, as a farmer, have no way to get my products to market, which means I lose my income. And that means that livestock producers, ranchers, don't have grains to buy. So our food supply really is shutting down to a halt right now. And so it's, there are other states that have been affected by the winter storm, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana. You've seen reports of the grid going down and blackouts, but to see them extending all the way up into the plains is a crazy thing. All right, so now let's go to this warning from the Texas Agricultural Commissioner, who says this is a red alert situation. Texas Ag Commissioner Sid Miller issued a dire warning Tuesday about the statewide impact of the winter storm on agriculture and the food supply chain. He says farmers and ranchers across the state are seeing devastating effects from the cold weather on their livestock, on their feed availability, and on agricultural products. As your commissioner, I'm issuing a red alert regarding agriculture and our food supply chain here in the state of Texas. I'm getting calls from farmers and ranchers across the state reporting that the interruptions in both electricity and natural gas are having a devastating effect on their operations. In just one example, dairy operators are dumping $8 million worth of milk down the drains every day. Right? Remember this happening last year during the pandemic. What's happening now on a grand scale across Texas and everywhere these blackouts are taking place. Because the plants that process the milk don't have power. Grocery stores are already unable to get shipments of dairy products, and even more broadly, store shelves are empty beyond that. We are looking at a food supply chain problem like we've never seen before, even with COVID. Okay, it's getting even worse. In fact, one other aspect of this supply chain that I thought was interesting was Walmart closing hundreds of stores, including those all the way from Oregon to Florida. So it seems like even more broadly than just the immediate effects of the storm. 628 stores closed. But what I thought was interesting was they actually created this application where you can go and check on the status of your local Walmart to see if it's open or not. So this is, it's a great idea. It's a nifty little thing, but it's also a demarcation point. We are now to the point where you need to go find out from Walmart when you can come get supplies. When is the supply chain available to you? Now you check. Do I have a green light? Can I go get food right now? This is unthinkable previously, but now you're being trained to check. Can I, is now a good time? Can I go get food today or not? Yep, just check the map. Welcome to the grand solar minimum. All right, so here is a media report that verifies what I've heard from contacts on the ground in Texas, that yes, that they were asked to boil their water, which of course puts additional strain on the power grid when everyone fires up their electric range to try and boil water so that they can get drinking water. You should have water supplies on hand at all times. And then again, a contact of mine said that the local Motel 8, which kept power, so if you were really cold, you maybe were thinking about going to a motel for the night. Yeah, the Motel 8 was charging $460 a night there in Tarrant County. And this report, which is actually from Austin, Tarrant County is Fort Worth, says the same thing, that Texas were complaining about possible, yes, definite price gouging at hotels during this winter storm, hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a hotel room just to keep warm. The media, of course, has started to spin the narrative around this event that, just like with the fires in California, that it's global warming that's causing this ridiculous cold storm. So here from the LA Times, Texas blackouts are showing that your power grid is not ready for climate change. Forbes also in this article today, are investors going to learn the right lesson from these Texas blackouts? Can we invest in microgrids and all the things we want to for Agenda 2030? Can we problem reaction solution our way in here, socially engineer you? Are the floggings working? The floggings will continue until you submit to our new normal, right? They actually say, quote, first of all, global warming should be called global weirding. The climate change is bringing more extreme weather of all types. Well, of course, that's what we've been saying about an extended solar minimum.
Yeah, I did. Just check into something called, engineering owning the weather, but there is weather modification everywhere, but there's something called ice nucleation, ICE. Several years ago, it was snowing when it was 40 degrees. Ice nucleation.
Is that you have more extreme climate conditions of all types, right? More extreme precipitative extremes, more extreme temperature extremes, and the hailstorms, the volcanic and seismic activity. So they're just describing basically what we would expect to be experiencing given the solar activity right now. But of course, blame it on you, blame it on cow farts, so we can further push the agenda down your throat to make sure that we're all clear that this is what has happened every other time that the sun has been dropping off into a solar minimum. I want to make sure to arm you with this page, which you can find at iceagefarmer.com/history, which takes you through the last few times this has happened. You can read all about Lewis and Clark making their way across North America and encountering ridiculously, minus 50, minus 60-degree temperatures, extreme hailstorms that killed people. You can hear about John Adams and Thomas Jefferson talking about the ground freezing to a depth of 2 feet. Yes, it's not unprecedented, as all of the media reports would.
Well, add to that weather modification. Remember 9/11, there was a hurricane and Hurricane Sandy made an extreme, went up the coast all the way to New York City area. Made a 45-degree left hook instead of going out to the ocean. So, yeah.
Have you think this has happened before, and it has happened exactly during the Dalton minimum when the sun's output drops off, like we're currently experiencing right now. Again, it's not clear how many people have been affected yet by the blackouts. It is clear that there's been a tremendous amount of damage to water mains and municipal water supplies. We talked about the water treatment plant. That's why you have the boiling water advisory. So even though temperatures are expected to come back up, in fact, even in the 60s over the next few days, it's going to take some time to assess the damage as things thaw out. I've heard so much about people's swimming pools freezing over. There's going to be real problems with the water supply over the next few weeks. Stepping back again, I want to point out that, in fact, first, this piece from Kansas, while I haven't seen microgrids yet mentioned in any of the Texas coverage, I did catch it here coming out of the Kansas coverage. Rolling blackouts in Kansas start renewable conversations again. This unprecedented demand on our energy grid suggests that, quote, long-term, we must address an energy plan for Kansas to encourage power storage, microgrids, and that move to renewable energy resources. Never mind the fact that it was the wind turbines freezing up that contributed partially to the collapse of the Texas grid, including the nuclear power plant going down today because of the coolant freezing up and seizing the entire plant operations. And never mind that, we're going to fail forward. We're going to push even harder towards renewables. It's the same rhetoric we heard in the wake of PG&E's destruction and the blackouts in California and the fires out here. So unsurprisingly, the Agenda 2030 language is all over this event, and that alone would perhaps intimate that there's more going on than meets the eye. But also, again, like we said, the fact that the blackouts are now happening in other parts of the country, from Kansas, Louisiana. I've heard reports. Now we've seen Nebraska and North Dakota. Cattle ranchers there complaining that they're losing power and their operations are struggling with that. So it seems like a lot of states that have food production are disproportionately affected by this. But maybe I'm speculating. The other question I want to pose is, why is this happening? Only days after ridiculously cold temperatures caused a similar situation in Europe and took down the grid across vast swaths of that population. It's never happened like this before, not at this scale, to see, and certainly not on 2 continents within a week, to see ridiculously record unprecedentedly cold temperatures take down our infrastructure at this scale. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the grand solar minimum. This is what we've been warning about for some time, the threats to our power grid, the threats to our food supply. We are seeing it now in real time, and we'll keep our eye on it. It's a very dynamic situation. You can find this report at iceagefarmer.com. And of course, all of this further underscores the need to be prepared. You should have food and water on hand. You shouldn't be at the stores where they're having to call in crowd control and have huge lines out the door just to get a few days of supplies. You should have water so that if the municipal water supply has a breakdown like this, you're not unable to drink. I mean, these people who can't boil their water are SOL right now. So probably goes without saying, but you just got to drive that home. You need to prepare for what's ahead. Thanks for watching, folks. You can find this report and all my reports on iceagefarmer.com. If you appreciate this broadcast and value the information I bring, please.
All right, yeah. And why do we have one utility corporation servicing 14 states? Why do we have this centralized utility? In the 09 swine flu era, in the 09 period, egg prices skyrocketed, and it was, oh, well, we got to call a lot of birds for bird flu, and turns out like there's only like 2 or 3 really major mass producers of eggs that supply most of the eggs for our grocery stores. Why? Like, we got to get local. We got to stop sticking with centralized or trusting in centralized. Everybody, like, just on our own, get more localized. Should not have like one power electric utility company supplying to like 14 states. Something happens, 14 states are affected. So, and this is all leading to designed, planned famine. It is. We're at a point where it could be. I heard about 6 months ago, my friend from Kentucky, the Kroger store, a lot of items she normally buys were missing. She talks to the manager. Oh, there's like about 900 items we're not getting anymore. And so we're just making sure that the workers spread, the cans and stuff out so there's no empty spots, and all that so that people don't worry. That was like at least 6 months ago. So yeah, keep tabs on stuff. Get protein staples, I would say most of all, because you can get vegetation and even wild edibles and all that. But in rice, you can stack up on, and like he said, water. I would say water treatment systems over bottled water. You can only have so much bottled water. Get yourselves manual steam distillers, I would say would be great. Gravity fed water systems like the Berkey, the straws, and that. But grains you can buy in store, dried grains and all. But protein. Tuna is not the way to go because of Fukushima, I would say. But like canned chicken and you cannot can meat pretty readily, easily. So just my 2 cents on this. I think we're gonna get hit like real fast on all this. Alrighty. Stop screen share. There I go. Chris, you joined. Oh, thank you. The Walmart app saying what stores are open is the craziest part. Yeah, 600 or so. Yeah, yeah. It all ties in, like using this, cold vortex or whatever as the reason, but join up if you can. Oh, okay, you're working. Yeah, this is our. I think it's like everything has looked normal if you didn't know any better. I knew like last April when I heard that about the dairy farmers having to dump their milk and the livestock ranchers having to call because the plant shutdowns. It'll cost them more money. And then the produce farmers composting. Some of them giving away food, but in general having to compost. Because then it becomes a health issue too if you get all this food and then the cows, my goodness, that nobody milks by hand anymore. So imagine all these dairy cows. Oh, it's awful. So yeah, I'll see. Probably not, but yeah, I might just shut this and then just start up again, just as like, just discussing this. But I mean, as if we don't get enough to worry about. But seriously, I think this food issue, I think we're going to get hit like a 2x4 real soon on skyrocketing food prices. Like, just imagine, next week, like eggs are $4 and a loaf of bread's $5, and meat is doubled, and I mean that can happen really quick. They can always, just like these price gouging they was just mentioning with the motel place. They can use this as an excuse to, this is why prices are going up so high, and it can get to be a real hardship and help crash what's already so many people already suffering and struggling just to make do. And like I said, the food banks a year ago were already running dry. And if it's true that we normally like live on last year's food supply and we're eating this year's food supply instead of being like, a year ahead, that's pretty bad. Yeah. So alrighty, I'm gonna close this. I'm gonna like start up again. And let me know, Chris, like email maybe Yeah. You know, just to maybe touch base on some of this stuff. But yeah, as if getting a vaccine, not a vaccine, but a GMO DNA altering experiment wasn't bad enough. It's not funny. It is bad. And that first rancher, and he said, like, we could probably feed the world. I believe that's true. We probably could. But it's funny. It's like all the main food producing states are being affected by this. It's only been about a week. It's like, wow, could that really just 1 week of cold temperatures wreak havoc like this? Yeah, currently they are. So, yeah. Alrighty. Alrighty, I'm gonna end the broadcast and maybe start a new one just on discussing if anybody's up to it in about 10 minutes. All right.